Welcome back. So this week the register of the course shifts. For the first 9 weeks we've been thinking about games as objects of anthropological analysis. What they mean culturally, how their economies work, how they're structured by race and power, how forms of value circulate within them and across their borders. The readings have largely been asking, what kind of thing is a game? This week and next we're asking a different question. How do you actually study one? What does fieldwork look like when your field site doesn't require a plane ticket, doesn't have a foreign language to learn, and doesn't put you in the position of the obvious outsider at the dinner party? What does participant observation mean when participation and observation are both in principle just different ways of clicking the same mouse? And what are you actually studying when you sit down with your character and your notebook and your chat log? These are the questions that the Writing the Virtual module is about. And the readings this week give us 4 different angles on them. Boelsdorf on what it means for something to be in a virtual world in the first place. 2 chapters from Nardi's My Life as a Night Elf Priest on what WoW is, who plays it, and how you do ethnography inside it. And Golub's 2010 paper, which raises some of the sharpest challenges to the assumptions we tend to bring into this kind of research. So let's start with some basic questions. Tom Boelsdorf's short piece in Practicing Digital Ethnography opens by identifying what he calls a pervasive confusion, one that I suspect many of you have encountered and that shapes how virtual worlds are discussed in public discourse, in corporate rhetoric, and sometimes in the academy. The confusion is between virtual reality and virtual world. Despite the shared word, Boelsdorf argues that these are radically different things. Virtual reality, as the term has been used since the 1980s, refers to sensory immersion, the use of technology to create a sensorially realistic environment. Goggles, haptic feedback, notion tracking. The aim is to make what you're seeing, hearing, and touching feel like the real world. The more sensorially accurate the simulation, the more real it is on this account. Virtual worlds, by contrast, are about social immersion. They are places where social relations happen, where people form friendships, communities, economies, hierarchies, dramas, obligations, or histories. And Boelsdorf's claim is that what makes a virtual world real is not how closely it imitates the senses of the physical world, but whether the social relations that happen within it are genuine, whether they matter to the people having them. His illustration is precise. A person with visual and auditory impairments can participate fully in a virtual world. Their experience is no less real than anyone else's. The friendship they form is no less genuine. The guild they lead, the raid they survive, the betrayal they suffer, none of these are made less real by the specific sensory channels through which they experience them. Reality, Boelsdorf argues, is not made by the senses. It's made by culture, the collective shared grammars that let us speak, and the shared social logics and practices through which human experience arises. And he makes a point that follows from this that has direct methodological implications for ethnographers. A text-only virtual world, a MUD or MOO, or any of the text-based environments that preceded graphically intensive MMOs, is not a 2-dimensional or 1-dimensional world. It's fully 3-dimensional. If a text environment says, you've entered a room with a red chair and a yellow chair, Susan is sitting in the yellow chair, and you type, sit in the red chair, you're moving in a 3-dimensional space. You're in a place, Susan is a person, and the fact that there are no graphics does not change the reality of either. What does this matter for us? Because it grounds the entire project of ethnography in virtual worlds. The reason you can go into World of Warcraft or EVE Online or whatever your game is and do ethnographic fieldwork, the reason it's not just a simulation of fieldwork or a rehearsal for the real thing, is that the social relations you're observing and participating in are genuine. The guild conflicts are real conflicts. The friendships are real friendships. The moments of collective achievement and collective failure have the same structure and meaning as any other human event. They're not pale reflections of something happening really somewhere else. They are the thing itself. Bonnie Nardi's 2 chapters from My Life as a Night Elf Priest give us the most careful extended account in the literature of what it feels like and what it means analytically to enter World of Warcraft as a field worker. Chapter 1 opens with a phenomenological statement that I want to quote directly because it sets up everything that follows. Once I got over my initial disorientation in the game, I developed a strong sensation that I had woken up inside an animated fairy tale. What Nardi is trying to capture here is the specific quality of the WoW experience, that it combines the richness of being a spectator, the visual world, the musical score, the cartoonishly realised landscape of Azeroth, with the participatory experience of being a player, an agent, someone to whom things happen and who makes things happen. She draws an analogy. WoW is like reading a book and playing a sport simultaneously. Her day in the life, beginning at 6 AM with a quick check on the herb vendor before logging off, picking up again at 5:30 for raid invites, is worth sitting with. It shows you in miniature the full texture of life in WoW. The preparation before the raid, the golden darters cooked into golden fish sticks for the buff, the reading of out-of-game forums and wikis so you know what the Serpent Shrine cavern fights look like before you've set foot in them, the silly banter and guild chat as people gather at the instance entrance, the elaborate social choreography of a 25-person raid group, tanks, healers, damage healers, each dependent on the others, the elevator boss, the player who dashes into an open shaft and falls to their death before the raid has properly begun, provoking a mix of laughter and irritation, the cycles of wipes and recovery and discussion and retry, and finally the lurker goes down. The raid is deliriously happy. A screenshot is taken of the group surrounding the dead boss. This is ethnographic writing. It is also in another register a training document. It's Nardi teaching you to see what WoW is, showing rather than telling. The concept she returns to in thinking about why this world is compelling to so many people is the word players themselves use, escape. WoW, she suggests, offers refuge from modernity, from advertising, from the fragmentation of contemporary attention, from the ambient anxiousness of everyday life. It is restful, even old-fashioned. The analogy she draws is to the Victorian novel, the hefty novels into which she would sink hours of commerce-free entertainment. And what WoW provides, which the Victorian novel only partially does, is genuine sociality within the escape. You're not reading alone. You're adventuring with other people. The guild is your community. This matters methodologically. It means that the people Nardi is studying are not primarily playing WoW as if it were a game, in this sense of a trivial diversion. They're inhabiting it, investing in it, building something in it, characters, reputations, friendships, histories, and that makes it a field site in the full anthropological sense. Chapter 2 in Nardi's book is about the method. And what's immediately striking is how carefully Nardi positions herself between participant and observer, and how decisively she concludes that in World of Warcraft you must tilt toward the participant end. The core challenge of anthropological work in any setting is gaining access to the culture you want to study. In a village in Papua New Guinea, this requires a long and often uncomfortable process of establishing yourself as a familiar, non-threatening presence, being seen to work, being seen at the right social occasions, being known by name and by social role. In World of Warcraft, the equivalent process is finding a guild, because World of Warcraft's social life, at least the social life that Nardi is interested in, which is raid-based guild life, is inaccessible without guild membership. You cannot raid alone. You cannot enter the high-end content without a group, and the group is constituted by the guild. Nardi's account of how she found her guilds is a piece of ethnographic narrative in its own right. She accepted an early invite, didn't feel connected, left, found a new guild through a chance conversation with a personable young player, built connections, enjoyed a period of genuine community. Guild parties, PvP, the chaos of guild meetings where players subverted the leader's attempts at seriousness, then drama, interpersonal conflict, the leader disappeared, the guild disbanded, Several more months followed before she landed in Scarlet Raven, where she stayed for 2 years. This is the same structure of arrival, disappointment, false starts, and eventual settledness that characterises good fieldwork in any setting. What makes Nardia's methodological position unusual and worth reflecting on is that her character looked like any other. She blended in completely. When she was doing fieldwork in Papua New Guinea, she was obviously an outsider. In World of Warcraft, she was functionally indistinguishable from any other player. She could be observed as a player. She was a full participant in raid activities. This raises a question she addresses directly. Did her presence perturb the culture? Her answer is barely. Some players knew she was a researcher. Most were incurious about it. The research was not salient in her guild interactions. It became significant only in interviews. And she notes that when, even in the interviews, short conversations online left the field site largely undisturbed. The implication is that in a virtual world with hundreds or thousands of players, the addition of one more player who also happens to be taking field notes is, to most of the community, invisible. But there's something more interesting underneath this point. The research method was accumulation. Nardi uses World of Warcraft's built-in chat log function to record all chat in her chat window, generating thousands of pages of text logs from her play sessions. She didn't always know what she was going to do with them. As Marilyn Strathern says of ethnography generally, and Nardi quotes her, it involves the deliberate attempt to generate more data than the researcher is aware of at the time of collection. The anthropologist gathers, and the analysis comes later, as patterns emerge from the accumulated mass. Chat logs, screenshots, website posts, guild forum discussions, recorded interviews. These are the field materials. And they're generated not by sitting and watching, but by playing, by being there. Alex Golub's 2010 paper raises two challenges that we also should sit with carefully, because they complicate the methodological picture in ways that are directly relevant to your fieldwork. The first challenge is the assumption that what makes players committed to virtual worlds is sensorial immersion. That people are in World of Warcraft because World of Warcraft looks and sounds convincingly like a world, and that this convincing appearance is what generates the hours of engagement. Golub's data complicates this directly. The most highly committed raiders, the people who spend 40 or more hours a week in the game, who have planned and optimised their play in minute detail, are not the people who turned up with graphic settings and marvel at the dragons. They are the people who have stripped down the interface to its functional minimum. They run damage meters. They overlay the screen with dozens of numerical readouts. Their threat level, the boss's remaining health as a percentage. Their own healing output compared to the other healers. They have essentially turned the visual and oral game itself off and replaced it with a dashboard. They're not more immersed in the world than the other players. They have made the game less visually realistic in order to obtain usable knowledge. What this tells Golub, and what he develops through a phenomenological framework drawn partly from Sartre, is that what organises raider commitment is not sensorial immersion, but what he calls a collective project of action. The shared goal of downing a boss, understood not just as a game objective, but as a meaningful collective achievement that these people care about, that binds them together, that their time and effort are devoted to. The raid is real to the raider not because it looks real, but because they care about it, because it matters, because it's something they're doing together. This has implications that Golub pushes in a methodological direction. If the game is not primarily experienced through sensorial immersion, if what makes it compelling is a collective project, then studying the game requires studying everything that makes the collective project possible, and that is where the second challenge comes in. The raiding community does not exist inside the game. It exists in a distributed network of sociotechnical systems that ramify far beyond the game's own interface. Wikis that explain boss mechanics, updated after every maintenance patch. Third-party sites like Warcraft logs that record and analyse raid performance in detail that the game itself does not provide. Voice servers like TeamSpeak or Discord that carry the raid's communications. Player gatherings at BlizzCon and other physical meetups, where players who have raided together for years finally see each other's faces. The game on this account is not a place in the sense of a bounded location where everything relevant happens. It is one node in a larger network, a sociotechnical assemblage, that includes many other nodes, some virtual, some physical, some that look like databases and some that look like hotel lobbies. Golub is arguing against what he calls the Pacific Island model of virtual worlds, the approach associated with Boelsdorf's coming of age in Second Life, which argues that virtual worlds should be studied in their own terms, as if they were discrete cultures with their own coherent logic. Golub's point is not that this approach is wrong exactly, but that it misrepresents both Pacific Islanders and virtual worlds. Pacific Islander societies, as decades of Oceanian anthropology has shown, are not isolated island cultures. They're nodes and systems of exchange, migration, kinship and navigation that span thousands of miles. The island is not a unit of analysis, the network is. And the same is true of virtual worlds. The game is not the unit of analysis. The network of commitments and practices that the game makes possible and that make the game possible is. So you've been in your games for several weeks now. Some of you have found guilds, some of you have not. Some of you are raiding, some of you are not at anywhere near that level yet. Still navigating the lower levels, building the character you'll need to access the content that interests you most. What Bonnie Nardi gives you is a template for the basic practice. Play, observe, record. The chat log is your field note. The guild forum is your community notice board. The guild website is your village square. Find the people whose actions generate meaning in this world and watch what they do. What Alex Golub gives you is a warning about the boundaries of that frame. Your field site is not just a game, it's the assemblage, everything that makes the game what it is for the people who are playing it. Discord servers, Reddit communities, external wikis, YouTube tutorials that guild members share before particularly difficult encounters. The real world jobs and relationships that shape when and how people can log on, and how much time they can invest and what kind of player they can afford to be. And what Boelsdorf gives you is the fundamental license for the whole project. The social relations that happen in these worlds are real. They don't require VR headsets to be genuine. They don't require anyone's physical presence in a single room. They're real because they're social, and they are social because they matter to the people having them. Your field site is real. Your fieldwork is real. What you're doing there counts, and the question you're building towards, the question that your final papers will need to answer, is what kind of thing is happening here that couldn't be seen anywhere else? That is the question anthropology is always asked. It turns out it applies just as well to Azeroth.